Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And I'm joined by my co host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
Well, one thing that is going on is Jon Jones in Thailand, and Carlos and I are here to talk about it. No, I'm just playing. We're talking about the fantasy matchup, and it is a fantasy matchup at the moment until this one gets done with Jon Jones taking on Tom Aspinall, the fight everybody wants to see. We're going to talk a little bit about the controversy behind this. We're going to talk about how we feel Tom and Jones would fare in a fight against each other. We're going to talk about the sides here and the angles that are going on, the drama it's causing, and yeah, I got to admit, this one for me, as a fan, I obviously want to see this fight happen. I'm sure Carlos is the same, and I'm sure many of the viewers out there want to see this fight happen. But I think that one of the things that people don't consider enough is kind of the angle of the Jon Jones side here. And I'm going to kick things off and talk a little bit about that to play devil's advocate. But if you're a 37-year-old Jon Jones, okay, now, obviously, you have the belt. You've been very inactive. You've beat an old Stipe Miocic, which everybody knew that you were going to beat. Your move up to heavyweight hasn't necessarily been that successful. I wouldn't say John's necessarily looked good at heavyweight. Cyril Gahn is not the grappler that we know and love that John can obviously implement. And he was able to finish Cyril Gahn early. And he beat an old, pretty much past retirement phase. I think Stipe should have retired a long time ago, heavyweight, and was able to obviously, defend his title with that. And to be honest with you guys, I don't necessarily love the fact that, John even shouldn't retire himself. I don't really think that he should have gone up to heavyweight. I think he should have stayed at light heavyweight, retired, and he probably should have been the GOAT there and called it a day. This move up to heavyweight, I don't necessarily know if it was an attempt to try and prolong his career, but he wanted to maybe pick some easy matchups. He knows maybe at heavyweight that he can out-grapple a few of them, but now he's actually got a real test in Tom Aspinall. He's out there ducking him. He doesn't want to fight him, and obviously there's a narrative out there that John is scared of Tom Aspinall, and Carlos and I both know that not to be true. I think a handful of people know that's not true. I know a lot of people like to say that Jones is scared, but do you think that Jon Jones is scared of Tom Aspinall, Carlos, or how do you see the fight? What do you see from the Jones side that would make you concerned here to fight Tom Aspinall?
I mean, there's so many things to be concerned about. Aspinall, he's quick. He's very technical. He's sharp with his movements. Like, it's not a lot of fat on his movements. He's quick, direct, to the point, straight. All of his strikes, and it's like so far his grappling has looked very well, and he looks strong with his takedowns. But I just think, like, yeah, any young guy who, I'm sure he's got a good chin. We haven't really seen Aspinall take any shots, but we haven't seen him hurt. But I'm sure he can be hurt. But if you're another fighter coming in and you're an older guy, and you just know that it's harder to fight young guys. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of times they don't feel the stuff that you're throwing at them until later in the match. A lot of the times they're just physically imposing because they got so much energy and they want to get the fight started. And as you're an older guy, you kind of want to find a rhythm first. You want to get your timing. You want to, and while you're trying to find that, you might get caught with something, or you might get taken down and caught with a submission. So there's reasons for Jones to be like a little nervous. But is he scared? No, I don't think he's scared. But what I do think is this gives him the right time to take this fight, because there's no need to go on a coke binge. There's no need to get drunk the night before the fight. You have your excuse. You don't have a lot of footage on this guy. There's not a lot to see. There's no sparring footage except for like 15-second clips. So that's going to make you nervous. What can I do to exploit this guy? Like, everybody talks about holes in the game. We haven't seen any holes in the game because he doesn't fight over a round. So you have your excuse built in right there. I don't know anything about this guy other than he hits hard and he's fast for a big guy. And if I were him, he's got nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Like, he's gonna go down as one of the best fighters ever. If you lose, you're losing closer to the twilight years of your career. There's no need for him to be afraid. So I just think that he wants to probably prepare as best he can. You got to admit, I don't know if you noticed it, but you got to admit, against Stipe and well, not against Gon, that didn't last very long, but Stipe, uh, his movement on the feet didn't look very impressive. He looked a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
sluggish. He looked very slow. So I don't know. I just know he's not afraid to fight him.
Yeah, the whole narrative of him being scared to fight Tom Aspinall, I think, is total bullshit. I think the only thing I will say is that just talking about the Jones side now, I look at it from the perspective of if John were to retire right now, he would go down as arguably the best, UFC fighter that there's ever been, the best fighter in MMA, or the GOAT, right? Now, some people might say, Khabib, some people might say GSP, Mighty Mouse, that's up for debate. But in his mind, I think he looks at it as, I don't need this fight, all of the cards, as Donald Trump would say, shout out Donald Trump. He would be like, you don't hold all the cards, and that's the situation that Tom's in. Is Jones holds all the cards, and he knows that. Whether those cards, are images of Dana White in Thailand or whatever it is, we don't know. But the thing that I think frustrates a lot of fans, and I'm sure Carlos is the same, is if this was anybody else, would he be stripped by now, Carlos? Do you think that he would have still had the belt if he was somebody else, or do you think that they're kind of playing favorites with Jon Jones at this point? What do you see with sort of him defending and or vacating the belt? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, I think if it was anyone else, they would have been stripped a long time ago. And I don't really understand why. I mean, Jones is a popular fighter. He's not someone that's gonna bring in ridiculous numbers on pay-per-view buys. But the name Jon Jones, whether you love him or you hate him, you're gonna tune in because you want to see, like the Mayweather effect. Who's gonna beat him? How badly are they gonna win? How badly are they gonna beat him? Is Jones gonna win? You know what I mean? The fans of Jones will tune in to see him win. The others will turn in to see him fall. But like we stated before, he's 37. He's slowed down. Um, he's got a strong wrestling background with Greco-Roman and folk style wrestling. He's a very strong grappler. I think that's going to be what poses the biggest problem for Aspinall. But Aspinall is, to me, I think he's like a Frank Mir of modern day when it comes to grappling. He moves very slick and fluid on the ground, and he doesn't like just keep his weight down on you. He doesn't just like, I mean, like I said, he hasn't fought long enough to do it to show us, but everything's been quick. So, but he doesn't look like a big guy once he hits the ground. So, yeah, there's a lot of reasons for John to be cautious. But yeah, I mean, personally, I would love to see the belt go to, you know, get stripped from him or have like, uh, was it a title fight, have him stripped, vacated, and do that because right now, like this is like when Connor had the title, it kind of just bothers me. Like you're holding up a division, like Tony Ferguson at that time, he was in his prime for like the last couple of years, and he kind of just lost it, and uh, Khabib, they held him from getting a title shot as well. And I'm like, I get it. You want everybody to tune in. I don't know how big of a draw he is. For some reason, I don't feel that he's a huge pay-per-view draw, but that's that Dana White privilege, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well said. I think that's exactly what it comes down to. I think that there's something going on there where, they use Jon Jones as a bargaining tool maybe for their upcoming television deal that the UFC's got. Maybe they don't know if they're going to be able to get this one together, and they know that a lot of people want to see it. So obviously the deal that they want to do with Netflix or that TV deal, they're thinking to themselves, if we announce that we can't get this fight together, then that might impact the numbers and the kind of the money that they bring in from that television deal, maybe. I'm with you though. I'd like to see him either I'd like to see him implement like a 6-month kind of rule where if a champ doesn't defend the title in 1 calendar year or in 6 months or there's some sort of date, they strip them automatically. I think that it should just be one set of rules for everybody, not special rules for individuals, because we saw with like Yuri Prohaska when he won the belt and he knew that he had that serious shoulder injury, he purposely said like, I'm going to vacate the belt because it's right for the division, and he did that without having to be told. He did that pretty quickly. To me, that's what the whole sport is about, and I look at it and think to myself like, obviously John is a character to say the least. The guy is very strange. He's got a kind of an ego about himself. And I think that ego is a byproduct of why he is also so good, and why he is so good at martial arts, and arguably the GOAT is because of that mindset, and that egotistical sort of mindset that he's got. But as far as the UFC, I think they need to put their foot down. I think they need to say, like, okay, enough's enough. We've got a guy here in Tom Aspinall that's a fan favorite. He's obviously very live in order to win the belt. Like Carlos said earlier, he's ran through absolutely everybody so far. We haven't seen him tested, and people keep talking about, oh, well, we haven't seen Tom Aspinall dragged into deep waters. And I remember hearing a quote that Tom Aspinall said, which was, well, you got to drag me there. At the end of the day, he can only fight who's in front of him. And everyone keeps talking about we haven't seen him late, but that's because no one gets there because he knocks everybody out so quick. So the longest fight he's had is the second round against Andrei Arlovsky, second round submission. But even then, he's still got the finish. And it's just tough because I think that I don't want to say we're wasting Aspinall's prime. We don't necessarily know if he's in his prime or if he's still got more to come, but he looks super impressive, man. Obviously, like Carlos said, light on the feet. He's super explosive for such a big guy. Got that loss back off of his record when he just beat Curtis Blades from that injury in the first fight. I would just want to see it, man. It's one of those ones where it's frustrating because I think even Jones knows that this is the first time in a long time that this is a tough matchup for him. But I think the UFC needs to step in and just kind of say, either we do this or, you're getting stripped. And I know recently Jones has come out. I don't know if you saw this, Carlos, where he said, I'm going to, he's basically thinking about retiring and all this. And I'm just like, if you knew that you weren't going to fight after the Stipe fight, he kind of prolonged that. That took a long time. He had that pec injury, and I don't think I speak for the fan base of MMA. I don't think we really cared that much about seeing that Stipe fight in the first place because we knew Jones was going to win. Stipe hasn't looked good in a long time, and I love Stipe, but I think that we knew the writing was on the wall there. And he even said, I think Stipe even said after that fight, like, thank God for that. Like, he was like, let's get this done. I'm ready to retire. So my argument would be is stop padding John's record and putting names on there and saying, well, look, I beat the best, because I know that's what Jones wanted that fight for. He wanted to be able to say, on my resume, I have Stipe on my resume. That's the best heavyweight ever, so therefore I must be the best heavyweight. But anybody that knows, that has two eyeballs, can see that that's not a good fight. It's not competitive. This is the competitive fight, and Jones doesn't want to take it. I think that that's doing more damage to your legacy than taking a fight with Stipe, who's 42 and on, pretty much been on the brink of retirement for the last 4 years. And I love Stipe. I think we just got to do what's right. I don't know about you, Carlos. I know you said that you would like to see him stripped, but do you think that Jones should retire at this point? If you're Jon Jones right now, what do you do?
Well, if you think about it, in the heavyweight division, like Jones does not have to retire. He could probably go undefeated if it weren't for Aspinall. Not saying Aspinall's just going to run through him, but if anyone's going to give him a problem in that division, it's going to be him. So there's no need for him to retire. Like, he's what? How old is he? 37, 38, somewhere around there.
Yeah, and Aspinall's 30.
Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, and to be honest with you, when he fought Stipe, he's closer to Stipe's age than he was to, Aspinall's age. So I think it was more of a fair fight. They were about the same speed. It's just the fact that he hadn't fought in so many years, and his last fight, Stipe had got his bell rung, by Ngannou. So he definitely wanted out. You could see it at the end of the fight, but I've always been a fan of watching Jones decimate guys, but then you got to understand, like, he fought Thiago Santos and what's his name, Dominic Reyes, and he looked less than stellar in those fights. And the difference in that was he wasn't in any danger against Santos, but the speed factor was different, and he was in danger against Reyes, and that's what played a factor, I think, was the speed. And Aspinall brings that. So I just can't wait to see what happens. But if we're not going to see what happens, and according to John, he has told the UFC already what he's going to do, and he says, I'm surprised the UFC hasn't said it. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. And what you said earlier, I didn't even think about it till now. Maybe the UFC is trying to get this deal with Netflix and goes, hey, we have the best fight for you for our first show on there, and it's going to be Aspinall Jones heavyweight title. Maybe that's something they're holding on to. I have no clue, but I'm a big fan of vacating.
Yeah, I could see them maybe using that as leverage, and that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the business side. And I think people don't think about that often enough that us fans, obviously, we can get very carried away with the fact that we want to see these ideal matchups. We want to see these big super fights, between the best guys in the division and legends and things like that. But if you're the UFC, you got to think about it. If they come out and they say, listen, John's told us he wants to retire. He's told us he doesn't want to fight Aspinall. That's something that they then can't use in the Netflix deal. They also then have to think about a way of being able to not only strip Jones, but also then put up an actual fight or a contender for Tom to win the belt. I know obviously he's the interim champion currently, but he's not going to want to get the belt from a technicality. So they're going to want to put on some sort of fight to give Tom a fight to keep him active. Because right now he said he's sat out about a year now. So he's unhappy about being inactive. So they're going to want to put a fight together. But the problem is Tom's pretty much blasted everybody. And Cyril Gahn is the only one remaining. And he doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. So it's a tough scenario, but from a business perspective, they're trying to use this fight as leverage, I think, for the Netflix deal. But I think that they need to come out and kind of just, hold this L really and just basically say to Jon Jones, hey, here's 40 mil, here's 50 mil, whatever the number is that maybe might get him out of considering retirement, putting his GOAT status, quote unquote, on the line, whatever it takes to get him to do it, even if they have to go do it in Abu Dhabi and get some oil money in there. Obviously some big sponsorship money from outside sources, whatever it takes to get John to fight Aspinall. He might consider it. He has talked about that. But again, this is all speculation because we don't know what John said behind closed doors. And one thing I will say about John before I kind of move on a little bit towards the actual matchup and how I feel like they'd fare against each other is John, we've seen this from him in the past where, there's been things happen leading up to fights that he knows people want to watch him fight. So there's always been things where, he's kind of dragged fights out longer than they should be. He's kind of waited a little bit longer, whether that's been, for the purpose of mind games for him against his opponent, whether that's cycling on steroids, whether that's things, going on in the background. We don't necessarily always know, but there's always controversy surrounding Jon Jones fights. So we can't act like that's not been a thing before in the past. As far as the fight goes, I honestly think that I was watching a little bit of the Stipe fight back the other day. And obviously, John wanted to get a little bit lighter for that fight so he could throw more kicks. I'd be interested to see what kind of shape he would come in for the Aspinall fight. If he would come in bigger, he might look to wrestle, or maybe if he comes in smaller, he might look to strike. Obviously, the speed advantage goes to Aspinall. I think the strength advantage and the overall natural heavyweight size just goes to Tom Aspinall. I don't necessarily think Jones looks good at heavyweight. He just looks like he's got a little bit of a pot belly. He doesn't necessarily look like he carries the weight properly. It just doesn't look natural on him. I thought maybe he might have gone up to heavyweight just because he wanted a little bit more of an easy ride against less skilled fighters, and now he's got Tom, who's very skilled. I think if the fight goes to the ground, I think that the overall jiu-jitsu game of Jones, obviously it chokes and things like that, I do think that he is still very live for those. But we've seen with Aspinall that, he's been a black belt for a very long time. His dad is a credentialed jiu-jitsu coach, and he's trained him obviously very well, and he's put in all the tools together. When it comes to the striking, I honestly think as well Aspinall has the advantage just with the speed. But I think the only way John really gets it done, which is why I think that he's not in favor of this matchup, is if the fight gets longer. We haven't seen Aspinall into deep waters into later on in the fight. But it's also John's got to be able to survive the early rounds, against a quicker, more explosive guy. So I think if Jones comes in and looks to wrestle to tire out Aspinall, maybe, possibly, but again, he doesn't. As a guy that's putting his whole career on the line, does he want to come in and just be like, "Hey, I'm going to hug him for the first couple of rounds to wear on him, hoping that wins the first couple of rounds and tires Tom out"? What about if it doesn't? What about if it gets Jones to more tired out? Maybe Jones knows that his cardio isn't going to hold up for all 5 rounds. So I think wherever this fight goes, I think Aspinall pretty much has, I don't want to say an advantage, but he definitely has a path to victory. And I think that's why John, knows that. He likes to study his opponents on tape before fights and kind of get a little bit of their tells. Like Carlos said earlier, we haven't seen a whole lot from Aspinall in terms of tape. So I feel like this one's a tough one for John. I think Aspinall gets it done. I flip-flop on it because it's like, are you really going to pick against Jon Jones? But yeah, I think Aspinall gets it done. I'm going to go with the hometown guy. But Carlos, what about you? Who do you think, if this was hypothetical, if we saw this fight was booked at the end of the calendar year, who would you have this one chalked down as the victor?
Well, if he can get it to the ground, Jones, without question. I don't believe that Aspinall's ground game is going to be anywhere near as technical and as Jones is amazing on the ground. He's a fantastic wrestler, good submission artist. I don't think Aspinall's anywhere near that level yet, but on the feet, I do believe that that's where uh, the advantage lies for Aspinall. What I do wonder is, can Jones get him down? Is the issue. Is we haven't seen a lot of takedown defense from Aspinall because we haven't had to. But the other thing is how is this takedown defense? Can he keep it on the feet? Is it that easy that Jones just needs a body lock and down he goes, or is he going to have to struggle for that? And taking down someone like DC pretty easy. That was at 205. Um, Cyril Gahn taking him down very easy, but Gahn pretty much had no resistance for him. So I'm like, what exactly is Aspinall going to offer? I do know that. I mean, I don't know, but I feel once it hits the ground, all the high level training that John's done over the years, I just feel once it hits the ground, if Aspinall can't get back up, it's Jones is going to submit him. That's going to happen. But on the feet is where Aspinall's got to do the dirty work, and he's going to have the advantage there.
I think I speak for everybody when I say it's frustrating because I do want to see the fight. I know that John obviously does like to study his opponents on tape, so it's difficult for people to really get an understanding of why I think John is prolonging this. And I wanted to get your take on this just before we kind of wrap things up, Carlos. I said to myself the other day, when he finished the Stipe fight, and there was kind of rumors of, like when's this fight between him and him and Aspinall going to happen, and Jones comes out and says, I want 6 months. Remember that? Like, a couple of months back. I want 6 months. And I thought to myself, does he want 6 months because he wants to cycle on steroids? And, and then I thought about it and I'm like, does he want 6 months because he doesn't necessarily plan on fighting and he just wants to hold the belt a little bit longer and it's his ego? What's your take on that? Because now we've gone from, I want 6 months to, I've told the UFC what I was going to do, to, I'm thinking about retiring. So what's your take on all that?
Well, a lot of that I think is just trolling, getting on the fans, because then it's going to get the buzz going of, oh my God, make up your mind and stop ducking them, stop doing. Which I think Aspinall with the little duck campaign thing, I think it's genius. I think it's hilarious. But yeah, I think like ultimately the UFC knows exactly what they're going to do. I think Aspinall already knows the answer to that as well. I just think we're the only ones that don't know yet. And I don't know. I for some reason I feel like this fight is gonna happen. I just saw something. I don't even know if it's like how current it is. It said he injured his rib sparring, and I'm just like, well, there's another couple of months, like 3 months, 4 months for it to get better. And I'm like, so how long are we gonna wait?
Yeah.
Only Dana knows.
I about Thailand. I saw with Aspinall as well. He was talking to Mighty Mouse, saying about how this has been the biggest struggle for him mentally, even more than coming back from his knee injury. Because he was saying, I don't know when the fight's going to happen, so every day I need to motivate myself, but I don't actually have an end goal in mind. It's just wake up, train as hard as I can. And he was saying it's very mentally frustrating. And in my head, I was thinking, but again, that plays into Jon Jones's hands because in his mind, he's frustrating Aspinall. And like I said earlier, that Aspinall holds none of the cards. All of the cards are in Jon Jones's favor. And unfortunately for Aspinall, he's either got a choice. Either he's got to sit it out and wait, or he's got to come to the UFC and say, hey, what's going on? And that's really all he can do. If they don't want to push the fight, or they do or they don't, Aspinall doesn't really have a whole lot of a say. And before I kind of wrap things up, I did want to mention one last thing with Jon Jones as well. As there was a lot of talk when Ngannou was in the UFC about, Dana was saying, oh, Francis was ducking Jon Jones. That was a whole narrative. And it's funny because now that we see this fight with Aspinall, it kind of makes me wonder if what they were saying wasn't true and that Francis wasn't ducking Jon Jones at all. It was that he wasn't happy with the pay dispute. And obviously he went over to the PFL. We know how that story went. My whole thing is if you look at that fight, Ngannou is very dangerous. He's very explosive. He has that one-hit power, which obviously we know Aspinall carries, which is why Jones didn't want to fight him, or he was prolonging it, or there were kind of a false narrative around that fight that Jones was scared, and then Dana was sticking up for Jones, saying Jon Jones isn't scared to fight anybody, blah blah blah. In my head, I'm thinking to myself, maybe there was some truth to what Francis said, and that Dana and Jones were in it together. Dana obviously has that Dana White privilege towards Jon, and maybe that whole thing wasn't true because Francis has that one shot power that Jones is worried about, being hit by that one shot, and his whole career and his whole resume is tarnished. I think that's how he views it, and maybe he views it the same way as Aspinall. Do you agree with that narrative with the Francis fight, Carlos?
I believe there's some danger to it, and that made him second guess it. But I think that's also why he wanted time to prepare to lift weights or, do some Mexican supplements, if that's what you want to call them. I'm not too sure, but the fact is like he wanted that because he kind of knew the superiority that he had on the ground with Ngannou, and he's like, I just have to get it there. And then you hear the stories of Ngannou being able to stop like elite Olympic wrestlers, heavyweights from taking him down because he's that strong, So yeah, that's enough to make anybody a little nervous going into the matchup. And you need to control this guy, and you need to keep him close. If you give him any space, he could put you to sleep. And it's the same thing with Aspinall, and I think that's it. But Jones has got to. The one thing that I'm thinking is, does he feel that he's lost that step? You know what I mean? Like, does he feel that on the feet he's lost that step so much because he did look bad when he was trying to strike with Stipe, except for that that spinning kick that he landed to the body, and is it the fact that he trained half-ass and beat Stipe?
Yeah.
And Stipe came in half-assed anyway, so he looked great.
Yeah, good point.
So does he know that if he doesn't get a full training camp, if he's not 100%, that he doesn't stand a chance against Aspinall? I don't know. I feel that mentally, there's nothing fighters love more than an excuse for why they lost. You have the excuse already. It's there. He's young. He's dangerous. Hits hard, heavy-handed, very, very fast. Just take it or vacate it.
Yeah, you bet you made a good point because Jon did look a little bit sloppy in that one. And let us know in the comments section, ladies and gentlemen, if whose side are you on? I think I know this one's going to be fairly unanimous. Are you team Jon Jones? Are you team Tom Aspinall? Let us know in the comments section. Obviously, Carlos and I have given our thoughts, given our predictions, our breakdown, our overall analysis of this fight. If it does happen, obviously, I know everybody would like to see it. And if you're new to the Ground and Pound podcast, drop us a like and subscribe. Obviously, we do a lot of content here about in the MMA world. Full card breakdowns, best bets videos, recap videos, you name it, we have it. Before we wrap things up, Carlos, is there anything you want to say to the people?
Hi, Ground and Pounders. No, I don't really have much to say. Just hope you like the discussion. Hope we're getting your brains working. Mine is working somewhat, just a little bit. The wheels are turning, and make sure you like and subscribe and comment on the video. Let us know what you think.
Yeah. And just to wrap things up as well, we have to just also mention that didn't Tom have the nicest call out of Jon Jones ever? I think that also hurts Tom a little bit sometimes when he's not a trolling trash talker. He gets on the mic and he's like, "Hello, Jon. Nothing against you personally, but I just think I could beat you in a fight." But yeah, I love a little bit of Tom Aspinall. I know that you guys do. Let us know in the comments section here on the Ground and Pound podcast who you would take. And stop ducking Tom. It's getting embarrassing. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.